What's good, everybody? It's the Clown with Cap show. UFC 310. It was all right. It wasn't the best UFC card. There were some really boring fights, like the Ian Gary fight was all right. But I want to start off with the Ciryl Gane Alexander Volk fight. I think, obviously looking at that fight, Ciryl Gane definitely lost this fight. They gave it to Ciryl Gane because of popularity. He just came off a loss to the GOAT, John Jones. So I think the UFC judges gave Ciryl Gane this fight. For better business purposes, maybe in the future, but he definitely lost this fight. We look at it statistically, total strikes. Alexander Volk had 105. Ciryl Gane had 48. Takedowns, Alexander had 3 out of 4. Ciryl Gane only had 2 out of 4. And so I look at that and I'm just like, man, I get it, man. You want to see the popular guy win, but this isn't, a popularity contest. This is, fighting. We want to see who's the better fighter. And clearly, Alexander was the better fighter than Ciryl Gane. So I was 100% surprised. But at the end, I kind of had a feeling that they were going to give it to Ciryl Gane in the weirdest way. I don't know why. It was just one of them things where I was like, well, the fight was just kind of boring in a way. It was just a lot of, weird takedowns. They didn't have the best stand-up. I thought Ciryl Gane on feet did not look like Ciryl Gane that we're used to seeing. It was just kind of weird to me. Yeah, Ciryl Gane got 2 takedowns, but I just think overall Alexander Volk won this fight. There's no way around it. He won this fight clearly, but the judges gave it to Ciryl Gane by split decision victory. So it was one of those where it's like, oh my gosh, how are they just going to give him the bag like that? But shout out to Ciryl Gane, even though he didn't win this heavyweight fight. It is what it is, but that's the thing with the UFC is don't let it go to the judges. If it's a close fight, you want to win by submission or knockout, don't let it go to the judges. But shout out to Ciryl Gane on a close victory by split decision. And then you have Shavkat Ravikant versus Ian Gary. Shavkat, man, he won this fight clearly. I mean, there were some good incidents in Ian Gary. I got to give a shout out and respect to Ian Gary. I kind of underestimated in this fight, even though this fight clearly wasn't like Shavkat just ran right through Ian Gary. No, Ian Gary, I think in the third round, had a couple chokes, rear naked chokes on Shavkat, which I thought could have really tapped him out. But he got out of it somehow and just controlled the fight. But total strikes, Ian Gary had way more than Shavkat. Total strikes, Ian Gary had 102. Shavkat had 65. But I think it was the takedowns. Ian Gary had 1 takedown, but it was immediately reversed by Shavkat. And Shavkat shot for 12 takedowns. Only 2 were successful. But during that time, it was just, Shavkat was on top, ground and pound. But this fight really wasn't a clear cut. Yeah, Shavkat won, but it wasn't by a huge margin whatsoever. Ian Gary, man, he came in the fight, man. I got to give respect to Ian Gary, man. He looked clean and crisp on the feet. And obviously that third round, that's when I was like, holy cow, Ian Gary can kind of steal this fight. Ian Gary won that third round decisively. Then come forward, 5th round, just kind of shaken up. But this fight I thought was one of the best fights on this card. And obviously the main event, Alexander Portanja, he won this fight clearly in the 2nd round. And it was awesome, man, by submission. But total strikes for Alexander Portanja was 33 to this. The dude who was fighting made his debut. So it's like, bro, this is a championship fight, man. This guy shouldn't be fighting in the debut on his championship in the UFC. So I just thought that was weird, but I like how Alexander had called out, Mighty Mouse. He called him out. He said, if you're the GOAT, come fight me, Mighty Mouse, which is crazy because Mighty Mouse is one of the GOATs, and he fights at 125, 130. So that's interesting, man. But what a time, what a main event fight. Probably the best fight on the whole card was the main event. And then we had the Bryce Mitchell fight. Bouncing back, Bryce Mitchell beat one of the Gracies, and he won by knockout in the 3rd round. It was pretty nice. Bryce Mitchell had 147 total strikes, and he had 2 for 2 takedowns. And this was a bounce-back fight for Bryce Mitchell. We remember last year, Bryce Mitchell got knocked out. One of the most nasty knockouts I've ever seen in UFC history. And it just happened to be Bryce Mitchell was on the other end. So it wasn't oh, man, had no sympathy for that. But it's just part of being a UFC fighter, bro. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But Bryce Mitchell battled back, man. He battled through resiliency and said, you know what, man, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to turn around my career right now. I'm not going to give up. Bryce Mitchell's still young in the UFC. So, I just think that was good that he finally got that dub. Finally back in the win column, man. So this was a great fight, but I'm looking at the whole UFC 310 card. It wasn't like anything decisively that stuck out to me where it's like, holy cow, man, like these guys are crazy good, stuff like that. But I just think, obviously you didn't have John Jones. You didn't have those type of guys like the big names in the UFC. That's why I think it was more low-key of a card. We just, what was it, 2 weeks ago, we just seen John Jones sell out a huge arena, and then 310 happens in L.A. It just wasn't as big of an effect. Donald Trump wasn't in attendance. Elon Musk wasn't there. So you could definitely see the different ways of that fight and how it went. But shout out to UFC 310. And then we have that last fight of the year in the UFC is Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. And this is UFC Fight Night. That's December 14th. That's going to be an interesting fight, man. We look at Colby Covington in his career in the UFC. Had some really up and down fights, right? He fought Usman twice, lost to him. He beat Masvidal, but then he loses to Leon Edwards in that championship bout beginning of this year. Last year in December. So I just think Colby Covington's coming off the crossroads right now. And if Colby Covington loses to Buckley, I think Colby Covington is probably going to retire from the UFC. I mean, he's in his later 30s now. You're not getting any younger. This is the UFC, bro. Like, this is, the top pinnacle. So, like, the older you get, you're not going to get any quicker or better like that. So, athletic ability-wise. But Buckley, man, I'm telling you, this guy's young. He's a hungry buck. And I'm telling you, if Colby Covington is not ready, if Colby Covington's still in the spotlight partying in Miami all the time with, badass girls and stuff like that, it's just like, well, bro, like, is the hunger gone? Like, are you still in the gym 24/7? Are you still hungry? Do you still have that passion? Are you running every day? Are you training in the gym every single day in and day out? Are you partying with Little Pump? Are you partying with models down there in Florida? Like, what is it? So I just think Colby Covington, man, this is a huge fight for him. I think all the pressure's on Colby Covington. We look at Buckley, there's no really pressure on him. He's supposed to lose this fight. Buckley's coming off a 5-fight win streak, dude. So, I just think right now Buckley's a young bull. He's young, man, and I'm telling you, dude, he's going to be ready for this fight. He and his record in the UFC is 20-6. So I just think right now, Buckley, man, he's one of those guys that if Colby underestimates him whatsoever and this fight doesn't go to the ground, which I think Colby's going to try to shoot for takedowns, I think Buckley's going to win this fight. Unless we see a different side of Colby. If we see that hunger Colby. If we see that Colby from the Usman fight #1. That's the one I want to see. So just some crossroads. That's the last fight of the year, man. I can't wait for that fight as well. But, going into 2025 in the UFC and Dana White, they have some huge fights. And I think this is going to be a better fight for next year, or better all-around year next year in 2025 than it was in 2024. We look at John Jones, Tom Aspinall. You got Alex Pereira. He's going to fight again. So that's going to be a huge fight. You got the Diamond Dustin Poirier. One more fight left in the UFC. Are we ever going to see Conor McGregor back? The biggest draw in the UFC history. And the sad reality with that is he's dealing with some other cases right now, other stuff outside of the UFC. But I just think for right now, for Conor McGregor, I just think, man, I don't know. I don't see it, man. I think Conor McGregor is done for the UFC forever, man. I hate to say it, man. I just think you got all this money. You got $500 million. Half a beat. You got half a beat, man. Like, where's the hunger, man? We don't see Conor McGregor in the gym anymore. We don't see that hungry dog, hungry lion anymore. Conor McGregor's out here selling his whiskey, man. Out here making millions of dollars. He could care less about training. So my prediction is with Conor McGregor, the biggest star the UFC's ever seen, I don't think he's going to fight in the UFC anytime soon. I really don't. I think, honestly, he's done. He's done forever, man. That kind of sucks for the UFC. But then but there's some other big fights. You got Duplessis versus Chimaev in 2025. I'm telling you, man, you got Islam fighting. You got Sugar Sean O'Malley fighting. A lot of UFC stars, a lot of big-time fights in 2025 that I cannot wait for. So the UFC's in for a treat next year. It's going to be great. But what a way off to finish this year. I mean, 310 was all right, man. But I'm telling you, Cyril God did not win that fight. They gave it to him. I don't know why. Was it because of popularity? What was the cause of that? It makes no sense to me. But, it was an all right, decent card overall. But I'm telling you, in 2025, the UFC and Dana White, man, they're cooking up some huge-time fights. Bigger fights than this year in 2024. I cannot wait. This is going to be iconic, man. And it makes sense why Dana White and the UFC is over $1 billion industry now. They're just taking over globally. They're going to Dubai. They're going to different countries, man. They're not just here in America, in Las Vegas, and big cities in New York. No, they're all over the world, man. So props out to Dana White. He knows what he's doing with big business, man. It's just great, man. It really is. Then you got guys like Israel Adesanya. He's at the crossroads of his career as well. It's going to be interesting to see how his career develops in 2025 as well. But huge fights. But the biggest fight in 2025 is definitely 100% John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. That fight has to happen. Dana White and Hunter and Campbell, all those guys got to come together and say, hey, John Jones, you want 40, 50 million this fight? Okay, we're going to give it to you. John Jones, you never lost a fight in the UFC. You brought us big business year in and year out. You continue to win. All right, we'll give you what you want. So John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Hopefully spring, summer 2025, man. I cannot wait. The biggest fight in UFC history. It's the Clouded with Cam show. Let's go!